So first off, I want to thank the grace of heaven and the virtues of the masters, the mercy of the grand predecessors, transmitting masters, lecturers, and everyone here today for this opportunity to talk about our Chenin, or predecessor or senior elder. His title or position in heaven now is Da De Zhenjing, true sage of great virtue. All right. All right. So this is kind of an overview, brief overview of his life, and we'll go into his details of some things after that. So his surname is Liu. Okay, so given name is Chen Xiang. Yeah. They have a style name, De Hua, and an alias also known as Cun Hui. So actually we have, I guess we have two temples named after him, right? One is Cun Hui Ru Yuan, and the other one is Da De Fo Yuan. I think there are only two, as far as I know. Okay, so he was born in 1909. On the lunar date is the 6/29. Was born in Ninghe County in Hebei Province. So this happens to be the same county as where Lao Chenin was born. So they're come from the same place. Now he was raised in a pretty well-to-do family. Okay. And is brought up with the virtues of loyalty, filial piety, and ethics, observing the rules of the house, kindness, courtesy, and gentility. So he was pretty, refined and elegant. And I guess I could use the word couth, C-O-U-T-H. That means, cultured, refined, and well-mannered. Okay, so, and he, loved to learn from the saints and sages, and so he's pretty scholarly person, right? In 1941, he received the Tao. Okay, now in his 20s and 30s, he was involved in the business of I think it's some kind of like distillery equipment or something in Heilongjiang, which is in the northeast China. As the accountant, because of his outstanding credit and good reputation, he was able to earn a good living without worries about food and clothing, right? And he had a pretty smooth career. In 1945, at the end of World War II, though, suddenly the political situation changed for the worse, right, as the communists took over. Now, anyone who was not a peasant was suddenly a target of suppression, right? Unfortunately, Chenin's name was also on that list. So basically his life, he went from going from a peaceful living to sudden downfall. And Chenin realized the impermanence of life. So, properties and businesses, they were like the flowers in a mirror, having only temporary existence. Only the great Tao was everlasting. So Chenin made a great vow to fairy sentient beings and emulate the saints and sages to take the holy path of Tao cultivation and propagation. Right. So in 1947, he volunteered to pioneer Tao in Taiwan, and became basically the leader of the Faiyi Tongyi, Tao Society. During his time in Taiwan, he suffered great hardships, trials, and tribulations. I mean, all the pioneers of Tao in Taiwan, they suffered that, but he actually suffered the most. Okay, so in 1972, on the lunar 9/29, he then returned to heaven finally. Unfortunately, he was only about 64 years old. Okay, and God bestowed the title of Da De Zhenjing for him. Okay. All right, so the Great Vow, after he received Tao in 1941, he's diligently cultivated and did not dare to slack off in his cultivation or propagating the Tao. So Lao Chenin had suggested, so this, I guess not too long after he met Lao Chenin, And Lao Chen suggested to Dao Elder that Chenin, he's a great resource and talent in the temple, so that the temple could really use someone of his talent, I guess, or abilities. So the Dao Elder suggested that Chenin live in the temple and help with the announcing and transcribing during sandwriting channeling sessions. Okay, so back then they did have channeling. It was, I think it was, well, it wasn't all sandwriting, but the sandwriting, typically you have three, today we say, we have three sancai. Okay, so it's like the three holy mediums who are involved in the sandwriting. But and today they are, or ever since they went to Taiwan, they were like girls. But back in China during that time, it was actually men who were doing that. And he was kind of, Chenin actually did, I don't think he was actually the holy medium, the one that did the spiritual channeling. I don't think he did that. He was either announcing, what the spiritual channeling, the medium would write the characters in the sand, and another person would then announce what was written, and then a third person would be kind of recording it. So he did either the announcing or the recording or transcribing. Actually, Lao Chenin also did that too. Okay, so I didn't mention that before, but all right. Okay. Now, Chenin, he was also recommended to receive the transmitting master mandate to help propagate the Tao. So this, so sometime afterwards. So then, since taking on the transmitting master responsibility, Chenin strengthened his Tao heart and more diligently cultivated and propagated Tao. And then in 1947, he made the great vow to pioneer Tao in Taiwan. So he was in the first group of Chenin to go to Taiwan in that spring. He didn't dare to tell his family where he was going. Okay. Now somehow his wife kind of gotten wind of it, and obviously very reluctant to let him go. So she told their youngest son to try to stop him from leaving. So his youngest son, grabbed his leg. So Chenin, he insisted on leaving. And obviously, it was very difficult for him. He held back his inner reluctance to leave his family. His eyes were brimming of tears. He says, I am going to Tianjin. Okay. Why are you crying? Okay. So basically, saying that, yeah, he's just going to, for a brief trip. But I guess maybe in the back of his mind, he knew that perhaps going to Taiwan, he may or may not be able to come back, right? So just like that, he freed himself from the clutches of his son and walked out the door without looking back. Yeah, so that's he had to make a big sacrifice to leave, and also obviously gave up his career. Okay, so he spent the rest of his life since 1947 to 1972 in pioneering Tao in Taiwan, and he never got a chance to go back. In fact, he never even was able to communicate. So, basically it was a one-way journey, right? When his family finally received a letter, right, from Taiwan, it was to inform them that Chenin actually had passed away and returned to heaven. So that's very sad. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. This is actually a picture of our Chenin Dao De Zhenjing before he left for Taiwan. Okay. All right. Now in Taiwan, trials and tribulations. All right. So in 1947 in spring, Chenin arrived in Taiwan and settled in Tainan, which is in the south. Obviously, it was an unfamiliar land, and there's a language barrier because they spoke Mandarin, whereas in Taiwan, they spoke a different dialect, and so it was hard to communicate with the locals. Now, it was definitely very difficult to ferry people as well, because partly because of that, and so life was extremely difficult. Excuse me. But several Chen, they got together to try to make the best of the situation, to kind of help each other out. One of the problems was the currency. So they were definitely in financial straits because the currency that they brought with them was devalued. With the new currency, 40,000 to one. So obviously they had to do. It was very difficult for them to. They had to make a living. Okay. Now, in 1948, he ferried Liu Chenin. Okay, so actually, who later become the Chenin of the Huiyin Dao Society. Okay, so he's the title is his title is Huiyin Dao Society. Okay, now actually Liu Chenin, when they met in Taiwan, they actually they kind of met at a train station. They say, oh, it looked like they were both from the same they're like same village or same county, whatever. But actually, Liu Chen, he had already received a Dao in China. It was a different group, Dao group, but he couldn't find a temple, so he basically joined them. Okay, so joined Chenin, and now because Liu Chenin was in the Air Force, right? He was in the military, the Air Force, so they were kind of able to ferry some Air Force personnel. Okay. Okay, so this is our Chenin, and then this is that Liu Chenin. Okay, this is kind of a younger, earlier picture, right? And then this is actually there's another Chenin, Zhang Chenin of who later become Chen En Daxian, right? So he's the leader of the Cifa Dao Society. So actually our Dao de Zhenjing Chenin, being that he kind of ferried these two, right, Chenin, and they all, have, pretty high also positions in heaven. So really he's, Chenin really, he kind of, you can say a lot also from them as well, because, saying is if you ferry someone and they become a Buddha, well, it should go without saying that you also become a Buddha too. So all right. Okay, so in 1949, excuse me, autumn, right? Someone in the Air Force reported that they were carrying out illegal activities, right? Remember that time, because the nationalist government, right? They suspicious of the communists, right? They're fighting the communists actually, and so they're suspicious of any kind of group activity, and so someone had reported on them. So these are the five. So you had Art Chenin, you had Qi Chenin, you have Li Chenin, Zhang Chenin, and Yu Jing De. Okay, they were detained for 11 days and interrogated. Okay. Now, Qi Chenin, okay, right, he's actually the Chenin for the Tianen Dao Society. Li Chenin is of the Lingyin Dao Society. And then Zhang Chenin, let's see, Zhang Chenin, all right, we mentioned already, of the Cifa Dao Society. Okay. So they were, suspected of being communist spies. Now, Chenin was steadfast in not revealing the three treasures, okay, because, well, I guess the police kind of got wind of, saying, well, these people in the Tao, they seem to have some kind of secret, okay, and so they're trying to interrogate them, trying to get them to reveal the secret, which I guess it's the three treasures. Now, obviously, when we receive the Tao, we vow actually not to reveal the three treasures. Okay, we make that vow actually. All right, so So Chenin was, he was insistent that it, cannot reveal it. So he was tortured. Actually, I mean, they were all beaten, as because no one was revealing anything, but he was tortured the most. Okay, so he would not confess being a spy and revealing the secret. He was subject to beatings, was drenched in cold water, hung upside down, and had pepper water forced into his nostrils. Okay, so Chenin was tortured near to death, leaving scars all over his body. Due to forcing the pepper water into his nostrils, he later got a lung illness. Okay, that was kind of how that happened. Chenin took responsibility and accepted the torture for the sake of the others, but never blamed heaven or anyone. Right? So he said, right, there will be a day when the innocent will be cleared. All right. So now, later, Qi Chenin, he had a stroke of wisdom, I guess, came up with a fake three treasures. So after he confessed to the police, then he was brought back to his cell, and as he walked past the cells of the other Chenin, right, he said, "Oh, I have already confessed. You should all confess." Right? And then so our Chenin angrily said, "How could you?" Then Qi Chenin said to them, "Listen to me. The first treasure is Ni Wang Gong." Okay. The second treasure is Wu Nai He Mi Mei. Okay. And the third treasure is Shuang Shou He Shi. Okay. So these are, he kind of made these up. But they seem to be somewhat similar to the treasures. Now, so they all confessed with the same fake three treasures. Now, the police had a witness who kind of corroborated and thought that the fake three treasures were the real, that was the real thing. So they were actually, at least that saved them from further beatings and torture. So they were transferred to police detention center in Taipei, right, and later to the intelligence department. Now, while they were in the police detention center, Chenin and Qi Chenin, they were actually handcuffed back to back, right? So it was very inconvenient to say the least, right? Whether you have to turn over or lying down or even use the toilet, right? So the pains and sorrows of the Chenin could be tolerated only by extraordinary people, right? Now, so okay, so then later they were sent to this homeless shelter, awaiting deportation back to China. But because of the war, the situation in China, they couldn't be deported, right? So now the Chenin, they were originally supposed to be deported back, okay, right? And then so then they were later released one by one, some due to needing medical treatment. However, Chenin, Dada Zhenjing, he had yet to be released and was transferred to another jail in Hsinchu. Right. Finally, after 3 months in jail, Chenin was released. He was mentally and physically exhausted, but at least he was able to return home. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So this is a group picture. So you have Lao Chenin sitting in the middle here. You have Qi Chenin here, and then you have this is Dada Zhenjing. Okay, and then this is actually Lao Chenin's son that came with him to Taiwan. Okay, so now he's the leader of the Fa-Yi group. And you have Li Chenin here, who's the Lingyin Dao Society leader. And then Zhang Chenin of Dehui, Tenyan Dao Society here. Okay. All right. So in 1950, Chenin was detained again, right? Then moved again. So basically, those of us who, we've not been there, can't really understand what it is like to have to kind of wander about in desperate plight. Okay, so that's kind of that was his situation. Now the Dao affairs started to progress somewhat, but more tribulations were to come. Right. In 1967, on May 14th, informants reported to the police that the spies were meeting. Okay, so basically, the police came in, they searched the place. Okay, basically this happened after the evening incense offerings and kato, the bowing. Right, the police surrounded the building, rushed inside. They searched the temple, rummaging through boxes and cabinets, taking the holy books, scriptures, and bookkeeping records. Dalkin were taken to the police for questioning and released at midnight. Chenin was interrogated by 3 police officers, one after the other. So he's kind of bombarded with fatigue. At 7 a.m. the next morning, basically he was forced to write a confession. And then he was sent to a substation for further detention. The police invited the abbots of the 2 nearby Buddhist temples there to appraise the confiscated materials, the things that they confiscated from the temple. And they looked at it and they thought, well, they were actually, in fact, good material, persuading people to do good. And they weren't materials that criminals would use, right? So, but it was another 3 months of Chenin being tossed around, so he finally released. All right. Okay. Okay, some other pictures. This is Chen Chenin. So she's the spiritual leader of the Chongde Tao Society. Okay. Let's see. All right. So Chen, let's see, where are we? 11. Okay. Right. So Chenin was jailed a total of 5 times, but always followed the examples of saints and sages. He was always righteous and fearless. Right. During his imprisonment, Chenin was subjected to various abuses and torture, but he followed the ways of saints and sages and always calmly faced the difficulties. He was full of righteousness and fearlessness and able to overcome the difficulties in the end. However, the mental and physical suffering was almost unmanageable. Okay. Now, yeah, before Holy Teacher had given Chenin some encouraging words, right? It says, the reality that true Tao experiences true tests is hard to change. The foundation is tested with emotion and ruthlessness. Beautiful jade must be cut to become useful. A resolute, unwavering heart can climb the ladder to heaven. So, obviously, Holy Teacher probably knew what was coming. Knew what Chenin would have to go through, and so this is kind of tried to encourage him to kind of not give up. And so Chenin, he experienced hardships and tribulations for decades, but he always maintained a spirit of giving his all until the very end. Okay. And okay, so basically he was also very meek and yielding. He's always crediting others while taking the blame or responsibility, right? We mentioned that before, the 推功揽过. Okay. So he did it. I mean, he was actually able to do that. Okay. So Chenin, at times he would even take the blame of his, Hoshia, his followers, right? And he's also often introspecting, he's repenting and katoing in front of the altar, right? Because, always blaming himself for the faults of others. Right? Okay. Cheers. All right. So Chenin, he wrote a self-reflecting and self-deprecating poem. Right. So this is just to show you how humble, how meek, how humble he was. And very introspective, self-reflecting. He says, dim-witted, karmic debt heavy, no wisdom, sins run deep. Trials are self-created, neither heaven nor people to blame. Vowing to return to heaven, alas, my promise cannot keep. Lacking adequate achievement by teacher's grace, I have much shame. So he really felt like he's, disappointing Holy Teacher, that he not living up to or repaying or requiting teacher's grace, So but this, he's being very humble, you could say. I mean, so this is why, he has the title Great Virtue, right? True Sage of Great Virtue. His virtue is almost unmatched. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, so having been tested for decades, right, all without complaints or regrets, and without regard for his own life, Chenin believed that one day the sun will shine. The more defeats and frustration, the greater the resolve. Right? Even countless tribulations cannot stop Chenin from fulfilling his aspiration to save sentient beings. Okay, so this is definitely not. I don't know if you find anyone like that today. This is definitely almost one of a kind. Well, all the Chenin were they all had that kind of resolve, actually. I mean, okay, so that's something that definitely we learn from, right? So he had ferried his first Daoqin in Taiwan, who later is Wang. Okay, Wang Dindransi. Okay, so later become a transmitting master, Wang. Now, let's see. Right. Now in well, okay. So sorry. Yeah, when he came, yeah, obviously, when he suffered all those trials and tribulations, right? All those hardships, whether mental or physical, right? His aspiration to pioneer Tao never diminished in the slightest. Okay, and I believe he said that unless he's able to ferry all the people in Taiwan, he would not go back to China, go back home, right? So that's the type of kind of resolve that he had, determination to fulfill his mission. So after ferrying Transmitter Wang, right, he also ferried some. Actually, Transmitter Wang ferried some more people. So gradually, they were increasing the number of Daoqin. Now, Lao Chenin, okay, he arranged for transmitting master Cui to help Chenin. Okay, and so they kind of gradually established a Dao field in Tainan. So transmitting master Cui in 1951, he took leave he was in the military, okay, and he took leave at that time to help with the Dao affairs, and so Lao Chenin arranged for him to help our Chenin. Now, our Chenin, he rode a bicycle all over southern Taiwan as his mode of transportation, right? That's what he did. He rode anywhere he had to go, he would ride his bicycle. Now, during the 20 plus years in Taiwan, Chenin rode a bicycle all over southern Taiwan and almost every day, Chenin would ride his bicycle to, let's see, Jiali and Xuejia. Okay, so these are from Tainan. Those are about like a 2-hour ride each way, roughly. Okay, so you can imagine he's riding about 2 hours on his bicycle to those places to visit Daoqin and to give class lectures, and to also encourage and to guide the Daoqin. After food offerings in the temple, Chenin would also personally bring them to the Daoqin, even if Chenin was lecturing a class or conducting a Dao ceremony. Rain and wind also did not stop him from riding his bicycle to visit the Daoqin. Right, so Chenin would always eat a steamed bun or a rice ball just before visiting with the Daoqin so as not to impose on them for food. Right, maybe it was, and sometimes, maybe because of rain or whatever reason, right, if there was supposed to be a class, the Daoqin were supposed to come to listen to a lecture, they didn't show up. So Chenin would still give the class to the temple host, okay, who was there, all right. So it didn't matter, how many people were listening in class, he would still give the class. Now, let's see. So he always, managed the Dao affairs without regard for himself, and it was pretty much nonstop and tirelessly all day. It didn't really matter that he was losing weight. He was still energetic and in high spirits, never looking tired or being neglectful. Okay. Now, during this time, the temple had moved 5 times. Okay, they had to move around, Sometimes it was, like when he got out of the jail, he moved again, and then things like that. So, but total 5 times. Now, let's see. So due to the expansion of the Dao affairs and the number of Daoqin, right, the temple that they had was too small. And so everybody was kind of inspired, motivated to build a larger temple. Okay, so this larger temple was completed in 1974, so called Tongyi Tang. Okay, so today this is not the current temple. Okay, this is the precursor to the current temple they have now. But although the temple was completed, right, Chenin had already passed and returned to heaven 2 years earlier. Chenin shouldered the sins and sufferings of sentient beings while pioneering Tao, never living in comfort or enjoyment for a single day. He did not see the new temple, nor was he able to live in it. Now, how does this not cause us to sigh and feel sorrow? Right? After all he'd done, he wasn't able to see the the new temple, right? Okay. Oh, okay. Well, this is actually the current temple. Okay, so it's also in a different location, but this was, I believe, Tongyigong is the temple they have now, and that is, I think it was completed in 1990, something around then. Okay. Let's see. All right. Okay, so Chenin, he was very frugal in every way, just pretty much all the Chenin, like Lao Chenin, other Chenin, they were all very frugal. He lived in a shabby room, wore a homemade coarse fiber jacket, okay. He wore shoes until all his toes were exposed, right? He also ate, plain and coarse food, right? Oil used for the altar lamps, but not really for cooking. He used rice water, like I guess the water that you use to wash the rice. He used that water to wash his clothes. Remember, that's how they were very thrifty, very frugal. They would conserve and use, have multiple uses for things. Okay. So they only had there was a rationing, I guess, for the oil. And so they could only get half a kilogram of oil every month, right? And so he used that primarily for the altar lamps. In terms of when cooking, basically he ate the vegetables cooked without oil, or he would just wipe wipe a little bit of oil on the pan on the wok and cook like that. Okay. So when Daoqin came to the temple, Chenin would gather sweet potato leaves to cook. Okay, back then, I guess sweet potato leaves, no one ate those. Okay, they fed it to the pigs. But he also cooked watermelon rind, the white part of the watermelon, as a vegetable. And he made steamed buns filled with pomelo. Pomelo is like a large grapefruit, and the peel is kind of thick. So he used that, chopped that up, and put that inside as the filling of steamed buns. So you can see that he tried to. It's just they had such a hard time trying to make a living. Okay, so he would even collect unwanted vegetable scraps from the market to cook for himself to eat. Right, basically, he offered the good food for Daoqin to eat, and he ate the not so good ones. Right, also soap. He used soap for washing his face and hands and for bathing, but again, using the rice water to wash his clothes. Okay, so later, so during that time, then he made a living by selling goods in street stalls. Okay, on the street. So since leaving his hometown, right, and making a new home in Tainan, the circumstances were much more difficult. In 1949, the political situation changed in China, and all sources of financial support from China were cut off, right? So, and the Chenin's livelihood was exhausted, right? So, in order to make a living, he sold goods, and he kind of went around as like a traveling salesman or merchant. He even got at one point he was selling eggs that he got shipped down from the north. However, the police, kind of frequently gave him a hard time, so business was not that good. Right. So then started making this the bean curd. Okay. So only after Transmitter Tway came to help that they started making bean curd in the park, right? Because at the temple they didn't have any space to make it there, so they went in the park every day at 4 a.m. Right? They would be in the park making bean curd. So by 5 a.m. Chenin was out on the streets, going door to door, selling the bean curd. Right, he's riding his bicycle, and if business was good, he could get breakfast, at around 8 o'clock or so. Sometimes he did not get any customers, and he just felt exhausted and with sore legs. Since they were on a strict budget, Chenin was reluctant to eat any of the bean curd or spend money to buy a steamed bun to satisfy his hunger. Right, in this way, Chenin ate irregularly and later had problems with his stomach. Right, during this period, because of the hardships in life, he could not help but to write a poem expressing his heartfelt frustration. Right, so this is the poem that he wrote. Because remember, he's a scholarly person, so he's able to write some poems. Right, so he says, out early with basket, winding through alleys, peddling 5-spice bean curd on the street, hawking all day, thirsty, yet without tallies, all in vain, aching legs and feet. All right, so you can see that. Definitely sometimes is just so, you can say, frustrating and almost feeling very hopeless. Now, now the thing is, Transmitter Tway, he had to return back to active duty. Okay. So let's see. Basically, right, in 1951, right, all healthy soldiers, they had to return to the barracks. Therefore, Transmitter Tway, he returned to active duty and left Chenin to manage by himself. Unfortunately, Chenin could not manage the business of making this and selling the bean curd by himself. At that time, there were some other worthies, from Kaohsiung, who's a little bit further to the south, right? They came to Tainan, and so they kind of worked together and they switched to making noodles instead. Right, so this was how Chenin intermittently maintained a livelihood for the sake of sentient beings. Right, Chenin endured grievances and life hardships, right, and learned some skills to make a living and support the temple and Tao affairs. Right. I guess among Lao Chenin's whole share or followers, right, Chenin had really suffered the most. Okay, all right. So now this section. Okay, right. So ever since Chenin, right, received the Tao and started cultivating Tao, he embraced the Tao and practiced for decades as if in a single day. Therefore, one can sense the spirit of Tao in him. When we look at him, even if the air is warm, we feel like there is a spring breeze. Basically, the Tao is basically in daily life, and he really manifested the Tao. In the application of proper relationships, right, order of seniority, and okay, so now Chenin was very strict. He's very self-disciplined, and he was wholeheartedly dedicated to the Tao, right, in guiding and teaching by example. Right, we can learn bit by bit from Chenin as a role model. In terms of this is where as part of he's part of the guiding principles of cultivation. The respecting the teachers and the Tao. He adheres strictly to the temple rules and regulations. Okay. So Chenin, he very much respected and even feared the heaven's mandate. Okay, so for us, we kind of view this as we don't seem to take it very seriously, but he took it very seriously. Okay, heaven's mandate like, for example, what the patriarchs had or what Lao Chenin had, and the Chenins themselves as transmitting masters, they have this heaven's mandate. Okay, so now, so he would tremble in the presence of Lao Chenin, even after he had returned to heaven and during the sand writing, when there was a spiritual reunion with him at the sand writing, even though he become, like a bodhisattva, basically, he still, if Lao Chenin was present, he would still be very the same, like as if he was there, he would be trembling. And so he never slacked off in cultivation. Instructions from Lao Chenin were carried out to the fullest without the slightest bit of neglect. Chenin also never talked back or argued with Lao Chenin. So whatever Lao Chenin says, that's it. He just follows the instructions. And he completed them, tried to complete them as soon as possible. Whatever Lao Chenin said, so you carry out. Now, so there's this little story here who was waiting for Lao Chenin at the train station. Basically, one time Lao Chenin, because Lao Chenin was in the north, he wrote a letter informing Chenin that he was coming to Tainan for a visit the following month. The letter did not specify exactly, maybe not the exact date or the mode of transportation, right? Because now it was expected, Chenin expected him to come by train. So starting on the first of the month, every morning Chenin would go to the train station and wait for Lao Chenin, right? Because back then, they didn't have telephones, they could only write letters, and it was slow. The communication was slow, so you couldn't communicate with, find out from Lao Chenin. So this went on for half a month. And then from morning until nighttime, he didn't want to miss any of the southbound trains. Finally, Lao Chenin actually arrived at the temple unexpectedly, not by train, but by car. Right? So Chenin was so kind of disappointed, upset, that he missed personally welcoming Lao Chenin to Tainan. So this is, again, how much respect he had for Lao Chenin. That, it felt like he let down disappointed Lao Chenin by not being there when he showed up. Okay, and later on, another story where he was in the hospital, where he is pretty sick, and when Lao Chenin went to visit him there, he made obeisance to Lao Chenin. Okay, so in by 1972, Chenin's neck tumor, right? He had a neck tumor. Had gotten so serious that he could barely move. Lao Chenin came to visit him. Chenin endured the pain and insisted on making obeisance from the bed. So, his respectful heart is incomparable, right? So that this is, I think most people would not do that. Okay. All right. He also taught with tireless zeal, right? And let's see. And he also guided with skill and patience, right? Now, without ever saying any harsh words or having stern looks, he was very forgiving instead of blaming the Hoshe or followers. Okay, and he was always encouraging and giving good advice patiently, right, time and again. Now, whenever followers made mistakes, Chenin never reprimanded or said anything. Oh, look, you did something wrong here. He always treated people with tolerance and forgiving. Right? At times, Chenin would take responsibility for his followers' mistakes. Right? Now, there's one story that transmitter Chen, she actually is one of the transmitters, I guess, in Fusan. Okay, so she was following Lao Chenin. Recalled how she was taught by Chenin, because at one point when she was much younger, she had also basically studied followed Chenin for a while. Basically, when she was a teenager, right? They were reading one of the 4 books of Confucius. She read one of the words incorrectly, but Chenin did not say anything. After the class was over, Chenin kind of just pointed out to her the word. And suggested that when she got home that she look it up in a dictionary. Right? So when she did, she realized that she had made a mistake. Right? More importantly, she not only learned the word, but also learned to look up words for herself. Right? So she will always remember this guidance from Chenin. Right? It was a skillful and indirect way of guiding and teaching that left a lasting impression. Chenin taught by example through his conduct and demeanor, even without saying anything. Okay. And just like teaching a person how to get the answer rather than giving a person the answer, right? So Chenin taught with wisdom and patience, having the most benefit to the Hoshe, right? So this is something that we should. Well, today, people are impatient; they want the answer right away. But I always also try to teach, try to guide people, let them know, hey, this is how you do it. Find the answer for yourself. Then that's really the right way to do it. Then they learn how to do it themselves. Then you don't have to keep giving them the answer. Right? Actually, holy teachers, same thing, treating us. So a lot of times we always want to ask holy teacher, oh, this and that. But holy teacher says, use your wisdom, right? Use your wisdom. I mean, you need to kind of stand up on your own, right? Be able to, don't rely on anyone else. Okay, so Chenin, he always cultivated in good spirits and was always eager to learn. He often encouraged Hoshe to be more diligent. Late in life, while he was suffering from the pain of illness, Chenin would not complain, sigh, or make any sounds from the pain in order not to alarm or disturb the Hoshe. He would continue to teach as if the pain and illness was not bothering him. Right? So even though he was kind of had a serious illness, he would still be giving classes. Therefore, the expectation is for Hoshe to deeply realize the heart and mind, to resolve and take initiative in the Tao. Do not miss this opportunity of a lifetime to receive the Tao, cultivate Tao, and propagate Tao, right? So, we really need to learn from our Chenin and, because of what he went through for us, basically, for all the Hoshe, that we really should try to live up to that, really, repay that grace, okay? If it were not for Chenin, we probably wouldn't be here, okay? Okay, so yeah, this is some of his guidance that he gives to Hoshe. It says, it is important in cultivation to practice what one preaches. So what we say and what we do, it's got to be consistent, okay? To maintain constant sincerity and to wholeheartedly fulfill the vows and perform merits in order to requite or repay heaven's grace and teacher's virtues. See, this is very important to him. Remember in that poem, he felt that he wasn't able to fulfill his vows and to repay heaven's grace and the teacher's virtues. Right? If not for cultivating one's character, how can one save the sentient beings of the world? Right? If not for creating a little harmony, how can one create great or world harmony? Okay, so so how can we save others if we can't save ourselves? Basically, we have to cultivate ourselves. If we are full of what we say, Mao Bing Pi Chi, right? The bad, we have bad character, right? Bad temperament, bad habits, all these things. We have to get rid of that. We have to cultivate ourselves before we can really save others. It's not. Today maybe because of time, you can say, is urgent. We try to save people, but we do have to cultivate ourselves well. If we don't cultivate ourselves well, people won't even listen to us anyways. So, all right. And then, of course, so we have to, even in a little group, let's say in a family or even in a temple, if we can't have a little bit of harmony there, how can we create this world of great harmony? Okay, so again, those are kind of important guiding principles in the cultivation. And he also frequently exhorted the Hoshe, says, cultivation is only to help Lamu, or God, ferry sentient beings to the other shore, not to have any other desire for fame or reputation, right? It's really a selfless act, a selfless deed, right? That we have to become selfless to save others, okay? Now, see, there's a senior transmitter Zhu. Okay, he's in the Congde Dao Society. He's yeah, he was very close, I guess, he was close to our senior transmitter Cui, and so he said that Lao Chenin basically said, or he related to us, that among his Hoshe, right, Chenin has the greatest virtue, okay, that he's basically kind of cultivated the best. And you can say that just as Yan Hui is to Confucius, right? Yan Hui he's the young disciple of Confucius, but he is also known as basically like a copy of Confucius, and and Dao De Zhenjing is to Lao Chenin, so that's kind of similar. It's that Chenin was followed Lao Chenin very closely. Okay, he's probably the most like Lao Chenin, right? So that's so you can see how people viewed him with great respect, right? Okay, so this is a picture actually with my grandma, who later became Deming Dashen, Immortal Bright Virtue. Okay, so my grandma also studied with Chenin in Taiwan. Okay, and actually, yeah, in terms of so a lot more people have met Lao Chenin but our Chenin returned to heaven in 1972. So very few people actually today who's still around have met him. My family has met him. And okay, so but other than that, even other transmitting masters here have not. Okay, so I definitely, I guess, an honor, even though for me, I was just maybe like an infant or a toddler when I met him, but still, I feel very honored to have met him, even though I may not have remembered. Okay. Okay, so, cultivating with sincere. Okay, so this is so 自得大地. So Qi Chenin, right? He wrote these words about our Chenin. He says it's basically cultivating with sincere and utmost diligence, right? Touching others by enduring humiliation with poise. Poise is like being composed while he's enduring this. Okay. Right. So Chenin, he spared no effort in learning, propagating, and cultivating Tao. Right? His forbearance, tolerance, patience, decorum, and humility is second to none. Right? He did his utmost until his last breath. Even when sleeping, he would wear socks and keep his shirt buttoned. This is kind of like, it kind of remind me a little bit like, this comes from Confucius' teaching, right? So Confucius had a disciple, Zilu, right? He kind of maintained his dignity even in death, right? So basically, Chenin, he maintained dignity even while he was sleeping, okay? So that's part of the 4 awe-inspiring postures, right? Lying down, right, or sleeping, right? So in fact, Chenin demonstrated all 4, right? So whenever he's standing, he's walking, or he's lying down or sitting, definitely if you see him, it's very, it's like a demonstration of those 4 awe-inspiring postures. Okay, now, so the Dao De Zhenjing, or Chenin, he says that learning is the foundation of saving the world. Okay, so he put a lot of emphasis on learning, right? And that's what Confucius actually, taught as well. So now Chenin was always reading or reciting the scriptures and classics and learning the ways of saints and sages. He was never afraid also to ask questions. Okay, so that's really a mark of a good learner, someone who's willing to ask questions. Okay, so now he was sincere and honest, strict and careful, never sloppy, and donations were cautiously and sparingly used, right? Donations to the temple, that is. So Chenin was seriously ill in his later years, and the doctor warned that it would be better to be hospitalized, right? But Chenin was clear about the distinction between public and personal, like fund, money, and refused to use temple donations to pay for his hospital care, and so he preferred to kind of recuperate at home. Now, in guiding others towards the realization of truth and true cultivation. Okay, so one time a Dao Kin brought other Dao Kin from another Dao group, okay, to meet Chen En. Right, he mercifully gave them some guidance about cultivating Dao, and before they left, he also reminded them that they should go back to and follow their Chen En. Right, so later Chen En told Hou Xue, don't be, to not be greedy for merits, so as not to cause misunderstandings and not to violate the temple rules and regulations. Right, so sometimes, because basically sometimes if other Daokin come over to from a different temple, from a different Dao society or Dao field, come in and they like kind of join this other one, then it might seem like we're kind of pulling people over, right? And that could be the misunderstanding. And we shouldn't be pulling people. That's why we stay with our golden thread, right? Stay with our Dao line, okay? And and don't be like greedy for merits, trying to bring people in, things like that. All right, from other temples. So that's what he was saying, giving. That's the guidance that he was gave. Right in 1970. So Chen En, he developed lung illness. Okay, basically, he would cough a lot, and every time he coughed, it caused a lot of pain. At night, he really exerted his utmost effort to stifle his cough so as not to disturb the others in the temple, right, or even to alarm them about the seriousness of his illness. And Lao Chen En invited Chen En to rest and recuperate in Taichung. That's the middle of Taiwan, right? So during those 2 months, basically Matriarch Simu also sent people to visit Chen En. Right, when his condition improved or stabilized somewhat, Chen En he was still thinking about the Dao affairs and the Dao Kin in Tainan, and so he hurried back, even though he wasn't really fully recovered. Right. So the trials are endless, although Chen En took them one by one and worked without complaint. But what can be done about the external and internal trials that came one after another and never stopped? Because of this, Chen En had many worries. Right? His body gradually became thinner and his spirit weaker. Overwork led to illness. Right. Now everyone was delighted that Chen En came back from Taichung. And they were more committed to building a larger temple to accommodate the increasing number of Dao Kin. But more bad news as Chen En, he felt the sharp pain in his teeth and his jaw, right? And then he was diagnosed with cancer. Okay, so it took less than a month. Basically, a small tumor then had grown on the side of his face, basically kind of like at the side of the lower jaw area. Dao Kin from all over were vying to, they wanted to try to take care of him. So Chen En couldn't bear to violate anyone's wishes, so he went to Gangshan and Pingdong, those are in a little bit further south from Tainan, to rest for a period of time. During this time, Chen En, regardless of his illness, he still gave lectures, right, encouraged and guided Dao Kin everywhere. At that time, Chen En was getting an IV drip, right, for nutritional supplement due to the lung illness. Right, but unfortunately, it was actually feeding the tumor, right? So the small tumor grew quickly and became bigger and bigger. Seeing this, Lao Chen En took him to see a doctor who suggested he get chemotherapy treatment, right? So and that might extend his life, right? So he returned to Tainan for that treatment. Now, during the treatment period, heaven was very merciful and sent Buddhas and saints to visit Chen En. They all went back and begged Lao Mu, God, to prolong his life. But Lao Mu said with compassion, right, he came to the world and suffered too much. He must be transferred back heaven needs him. Okay. So holy teacher once he channeled and squeezed out a lot of this black blood, right, to relieve Chenlen's suffering. And after that, so spring and autumn came. Hoshe, then they all felt helpless watching Chenlen suffer so much. Qi Chenlen, he knelt down and begged God's mercy to end the suffering, right? So and then they cuddled, and then a little bit later on, so Chenlen then passed away smiling. So the time was it was at 3:20 p.m. on the lunar 9/29, 1972. He returned to heaven. Okay. Okay, so yeah, actually, if you compare these two pictures, I don't know when these were taken, but you can see that on the picture on the right, he looks much old. He looks older, much older. I mean, he only lived to 64, but still, he looked much older again because of all the worries and all the the trials and hardships that he went through. It really aged him a lot. This is actually his mausoleum at Fusan, right, where Lao Chenan lived. And so they built this because he was I believe, I don't know, at least one of the earliest Chenan. There was another Chenan who returned to heaven, like I think 4 or some number of years before him, and he's also buried here. He also has a mausoleum here. But this is Chenen's mausoleum. And this year, this was in 2012, they visited Taiwan. And so this is Chenen's grandson and his wife and their children. Okay, they were there. This is, I was there too. So I did meet them. Whoops. Here's a closer look at basically, I guess the tomb would be here. Okay, so yeah, we go there and pay our respects and kato and make offerings. Okay. So heaven basically rewards painstaking effort and sincerity, right? So at the first spiritual reunion, Chenan announced the title conferred by God, Dao De Zhenjing, our true sage of great virtue. Now, he also, at that spiritual reunion, again, this is done through like a sandwriting type, that channeling. And he composed this, I don't know if it's a song or it's probably like a poem. It says, it's cultivating Tao is good. There's an old saying, cultivating Tao is good. Morality is a treasure then and now. Right? Loyal ministers, filial sons, and women of honor all rely on it to set their goals. Despite suffering from all kinds of torment, riding the wind and breaking waves, that means basically the resolve is heroic, powerful, and fearless. And that kind of steadfast spirit is like the moral integrity of the winter plum, cypress, and pine that do not wither. Okay, so this is kind of like, I mean, it's that's the type of resolve that he had. Okay. Now, during spiritual reunions, true sage of great virtue, he's so merciful. He always calls out and exhorts each Daokin one by one. So if there are a few hundred Daokin at the spiritual reunion, he would call each one out and give them a little bit of guidance. So it's very merciful. So that if there are a lot of people there, it'll last a couple of hours, 2-3 hours, right? But so that's why it shows how merciful he is. Now, although Chenan returned to heaven, right, his spirit will remain deep in our hearts and will always be remembered. Every time Chenan returned, sorry. All right, let's see. Okay, so this is the memorial hall for Dao De Zhenjing at Tongigong Temple. Okay, they built this, and it's got his other some of the things like items, clothing, and other his writings, things like that are there. Okay. So I just want to share a couple of just brief parts of the channeling from This one is from year 2000 here in our temple here in New York. This was actually before this current temple. It was before this was built. Okay, it was in the downstairs. As I recall, it was like on I think it was a Wednesday night. But anyways, so when he channel, right, he says, this is like, remember the beginning part of the scripture, right? It's kind of like either the introduction or it's like also kind of like a summary of the theme, right? So he says, so basically, the highlight words form his title, right? So the great capacity for endurance and tolerance is the prerequisite for nurturing virtue. True knowledge and practice increases the chance to become a true sage. Okay, so this is, and then, within in the scripture, now the scripture is not that long, but, because then he goes and gives guidance to the people who are present. But in the part of the scripture is guidance, he says, the wise one knows to introspect. The foolish is only clear about other people's shortcomings. So again, he's kind of pointing out, we need to have that virtue, that inner virtue, that to not look, we're always pointing fingers at others or finding faults in others. We should introspect. We have to self-reflect. That is the true cultivator, the wise one, okay? Brothers and sisters have wisdom to make the choice. Wisdom or foolishness, success or failure is in the span of a thought. So again, this is all, it's up to us. The choice is ours, which path we take, right? And then he also said, this is a rare gathering for us, brothers and sisters. Do you want to hear good words or true words, right? And then so senior transmitter Tway was here, and he replied true words, and we all replied true words, right? So Chenin says, to say good words to you is really to harm you. To say not good words or not so good words to you is really to help you succeed. Loyal words are against the ears, but they benefit everyone who cultivates virtue. Good words are pleasant to the ears, but they only make you feel more self-righteous. I, Chen Xiang, okay, do not want to say too much, but without a physical body, how can I take care of you? All right, so I was there, and also I think Transmitter Lin was there. A few other people were there, even Transmitter Ray, Transmitter Long, I think were there. Okay, they weren't transmitters then, and I was there, and so he gave me some guidance too. Now, just to show you, how, I don't know, I really feel like I have a close, the special affinity with him, right? So this is what he said to me. He says, so many years have passed by since we last met. I wonder if you remembered it all, right? Now, unfortunately, I was just I think I was only 3 months old when I received the Tao, and definitely, maybe like a toddler when I met him. Now, do not be nervous. Relax your mind. Listen to Grandpa's good words. Okay, so I was standing there. I was very nervous, and so being in heaven, he knows that, he sensed that, and look, he feels like treating me like he's my grandpa. In the past, I see you as a child. Now you have matured and made a great resolve or aspiration shooting up to the sky. Don't ever forget the vows you have made. Do your best to create and make your goal come true. Okay, so, words that I will always remember. Okay. Now another one, this is another time, 2012, okay. I went there. This was in Taiwan. The main, in the beginning of the scripture, again, it says, it says, great is the matter of life or birth and death. Virtue must be nurtured without delay. True principles must be clearly recognized. The sage holds hands in blessing. Well, this means, it's like putting your hands together, like in prayer, like everyone prays. But I guess it's saying, it's that sage, practices, follow the sage, the holy practice, sage. All right. So he says, let me urge everyone to follow holy teachers' instructions is one of the things he is saying to study the Dharma of Buddha nature. We say 心理心法. Okay, so that's one of the things that later we mentioned lecturer Liu's lectures a lot, right? Because he talked about this 心理心法. I mean, he was actually holy teacher, kind of had him give these classes, and so this is very important because it says 10,800 years of being carefree is not forever. Right? Afterwards, birth and death are our own responsibilities, right? Because holy teacher only guarantees us at most 10,800 years when we return to heaven this time. I mean, obviously, if we become like a bodhisattva or true sage, whatever, then we stay. Basically, we don't have to come back down. But unless we get to that level, 10,800 years later, we're back on reborn, and we have to. So that's why this studying the Dharma of the true nature is so important, because once we can study this can really help us in our cultivation and help us to achieve basically the eternal life and not have to come back. All right. Okay. And this one, because there were so many people, there were over 300 people at this reunion, right? That previous one, there were only like maybe a few dozen. But this one, there were like over 300, and he, Dada Zhenjing, he called out everyone's name. And so obviously he couldn't give as much, say too much to each person. And he only gave like, so for me, he said, let go of thought attachments, right? Do your best to flow with affinity to be carefree. Yeah, okay. The advice is really, it's appropriate for each one of us. and for me, yeah, that's true. I have things on my mind I need to let go. All right. Very true. Okay, so our Chenan, the true sage of great virtue, he is a role model of selfless sacrifice and cultivation, forbearance, diligence, frugality, meekness, patience, kindness, decorum, honor, and respect. All these things, really, there are not enough words to use to describe his virtue. Okay. And again, those words that Chi Chenan wrote, basically that describes his life. He cultivated with sincerity and with utmost diligence, ever since receiving the Tao and to the rest of his life. And he touched others by enduring humiliation with poise and composure. It really, really did. And I can say, I probably wouldn't be here if not for him. Definitely. Okay. So, if you before the class, you probably heard the song. If you didn't, I'll play it. We can play it after we're done with the class. But the song, this is by our holy teacher who wrote the song in honor or remembering our true sage of great virtue. So it says, our predecessor, Dada Zhenjing, your love is in my heart, enduring severe hardships to save humanity, never blaming anyone, a life of Tao, only with Tao Kin, right? Because basically, once especially in Taiwan, there was, all he knew was, he lived the Tao. It was only a life of Tao, right? And the only people he knew were the Tao Kin. Your great virtue never ends. We will always love you. The spring of 36, that's 1947, he left his leaving hometown, following heaven's will, right, leaving family to save humanity. The war cutting off contact with home, enduring trials and tribulations. Predecessor did not dare to make a sound, fearing his followers will worry, right, when he was sick and coughing, right, sick from overwork, clenching his teeth and just swallowing his tears. Never once stopping, always encouraging, afraid followers do not progress. Okay, so he's always worried that the Hoshe would not progress, and he would always blame himself for not having enough virtue and teaching them well enough. He never scolding, tactfully guiding, teaching with skill and patience how to repay our debt of gratitude. Okay, so he's always thinking of, this is for us, that how do we repay our debt of gratitude towards our Chenan, all right? Unite with one heart, save humanity, follow our predecessor, guided by the spirit of true sage of great virtue, our beloved Dada Zhenjing, right? Repay our debt, fulfill our mission, bring salvation to all souls, follow his kind teachings. Okay, so that is, kind of sums up his life, his mission, and there's much that we can learn from him, and well, not just him, but all the Chenin, and really, we really should feel like, if we are not doing our best, then we are really disappointing and letting him down. Not just him, but our holy teacher in heaven. So we really must do our best and do even more than we think we can do. Really, we have to push ourselves to really repay that grace. Okay, so if I had said anything wrong or not well enough, I asked the Buddhas and also Dada Zhenjing for forgiveness, and I also asked transmitting masters and lecturers for their corrections. Thank you.